All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Claypool. I am a staff member here at Church Community Builder, and we are ready to start our Multisite Solutions video teaching webinar with Jim Tomberlin as your host. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Jim Tomberlin. I'm welcoming you to the bi-monthly webinar from Multisite Solutions. I'm sitting here in the studios of Church Community Builder in beautiful Colorado Springs with my co-host Justin Claypool with Church Community Builder. CCB, or Church Community Builder, is the leading company in church data management systems, and they've been a strategic partner of Multisite Solutions for the last several years. If you're going to be effective in church ministry, you're going to need a good data management system, and the Church Community Builder is the leader in the nation, and I highly recommend them to you. Now, today we're going to be focusing on the pros and cons and the how-tos of video teaching in a multi-site church. We know there's over 8,000 multi-site churches across the country, and about half of them use video to deliver their sermon content. And so our presenters today are two practitioners in leading multi-site megachurches. Chad Moore is the lead pastor of Sun Valley Community Church in the Phoenix area. And Chris Dreyer is the multi-site director at Sagebrush Community Church, or Sagebrush Church in Albuquerque. Both of these churches are successful multi-site mega churches that are effectively utilizing video teaching to deliver their sermon content. Both, by the way, also Chris and Chad are associates with Multisite Solutions, which means that they are available for consulting and coaching with individual churches. If you would love to have them spend some time with you in your church, they'd be glad to talk with you and come alongside. By the way, we're talking about video teaching today as a model for delivering sermon content in a multi-site church. Our next webinar in 2 months will be on the other side of this issue, and that is focusing on the how-tos and the pros and cons of a live teaching, in-person teaching team. And we'll be hearing from the executive team at Kensington Community Church in the Detroit area, a very successful church of about 12,000 plus, 6 campuses, and all of their locations utilize a live in-person teaching team strategy. And so we will learn about that side of that model as well on our next webinar. And you can sign up for that here after this webinar today. By the way, on this webinar, if you miss it today, but if you have registered, you will receive an email from me probably next week with a link to our Multisite Solutions YouTube page where you can view this webinar, download it, and use it at your convenience with your team at another time. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have participants from all across the country, from California to Florida, Georgia, New York, South Dakota, Texas, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and their farthest one is all the way from Nassau, Bahamas. I'm kind of signed up to maybe we can do some consulting there. How about that, guys? Check it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But glad to welcome all of you with us, and feel free to share this webinar with others in the days ahead. Now, before we dive in, I'm going to ask our co-host, Justin, to explain just some of the logistics of our 1.5-hour webinar today. Justin? Well, it would be helpful if we have...
Sorry, I had to unmute my computer. Yeah. You guys, as attendees, are in a listen-only mode. We will be open for questions at the end. So what you can use is the question box that GoToWebinar provides. Type your question in. We will catalog those, and I will forward them on to Jim and Chad and Chris so that they can answer those questions at the end. So thanks for tuning into this webinar. I will hop off now so that these guys can share their information, and we hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Justin. I'm going to turn this over now to Chris Dreyer from Sagebrush Church in Albuquerque. Albuquerque is a special place for me. That's where my first church, where I went to be a pastor in Albuquerque. And actually, the church that Chris is a part of now was a church plant of my former church, Hoffmantown Baptist Church, and now has become one of the leading churches in New Mexico. And we're going to learn more about what that looks like here in a few moments from Chris. But Chris, why don't you launch us into some basic presentation, you and Chad, about what do we need to know about video teaching. And then the last half of our session together, we'll open this up for Q&A.
You bet. Well, video teaching isn't always what you think. We tend to think in terms of internet and pictures and movies, but there's a lot more to it. And so we wanted to start off with the reality that there may be some common misconceptions about using video teaching. Here's one we hear often. People won't respond to watching a sermon on video. Let me give you some statistics that prove that's wrong. Statistics tell us that people will not only respond with all ages, but more than 4,000 churches are currently using video teaching and growing. And I know Chad uses video teaching and sees, what kind of response are you seeing via video when people have heard the message?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. At Sun Valley Community Church here in the Phoenix area, our largest service is a video teaching service. And last year we had the privilege of baptizing over 700 people. We had more people say yes to Jesus in our video services than in our live services. So people definitely respond. They laugh. They raise their hand when we ask them to. Those kinds of things. Yeah.
We see the same thing here at Sagebrush as well. Across the board, 8 of our 9 campuses are video only, and yet the decisions that people make based on the messages are identical, regardless of whether it's teaching or video. And so we really believe it's about the message, and we believe that's a myth. Let me give you a second one.
Absolutely.
Technology costs way too much to go with video delivery. You may be thinking that. It's surprising what you can actually do with about a $25,000 investment. You can get started with a very basic but sufficient video experience. And by the way, it's not cheap to hire a teaching pastor, is it? So let's go to myth number 3.
No comment on that, right? No comment.
Yeah.
All the teaching pastors went, well, it's kind of cheap, and everybody that's not a teaching pastor went, oh, it's crazy. So yeah, you probably had a mixed response there.
There was no audience feedback, so I couldn't tell that. Myth number 3, you can't depend on video delivery like you can live teaching. We've heard that tons of times as we first prepared to be a video-based campus. We had that feedback. Here's what we've learned. Good planning can make video teaching as dependable as live teaching. And just as an aside, videos don't get a cold. Videos don't space out in the middle of the talk or get sick or any of those kind of things as well. And so prepared right, video can be absolutely as dependable as a live teacher would be. Any other feedback from you guys on that?
Well, yeah, one of the great things about video is obviously good communication is a big deal in the church, and it allows your best communicator to be in more than one place. Yeah, and it works. So all 3 myths.
All right, awesome. Well, we get the question often, especially working with multi-site solutions. We will get the question, will it work for us? We have 3 simple ways to determine if it will or not. First of all, we believe it will work as long as you have the right teaching. Some communicators may not engage the audience. And so being able to learn some of the techniques for speaking on video make a huge difference. If you've ever watched Craig Rochelle, he looks with such laser intensity into the video screen. It's pretty impressive. And so it's learning that technique, but it's also having a message that you want to have broadcast in more locations. It's good teaching. So that's kind of expectation 1. The second is you have to have the right capture. So even if the message is good, it's not captured in a way where it looks good, it sounds good, you're still going to be missing the ability. And again, there are some video values that we can help you learn and discover as a church that will help you maximize the art of a good capture with video. Third one would be the right delivery. If you have a great communicator with great teaching and you capture it well, but your playback on video isn't what it needs to be, you're still going to miss the ability for it to work as effectively as it could be. putting some time into really setting it up well is critical to deliver something that people will really engage in.
Yeah, and when you have the right teaching, the right capture, the right delivery, people will wonder whether or not the speaker was actually there. That's one of the most common conversations I have around town. I'll be in Starbucks. Hey, we were at your church this past weekend, and my wife and I have been arguing. Were you there or were you not there? That's like a really common thing. If you do it right, it really, really works. Yeah.
Absolutely true.
I tell churches all the time, we know that there's about 90% of all churches are under 500 in attendance. Any church over 500, certainly over 1,000, you don't get to that size unless you have what you call in the right teaching, Chris, a capable communicator, someone who really can communicate the scriptures in a dynamic and engaging sort of way, as you mentioned. And so when we talk about video delivery, we're really just talking about what's the best way to leverage the gift, the teaching gift or gifts on our teaching team with the maximum impact. And so, and then it's your last 2 points. It's all about the technical, making sure we're doing it. You don't have to do it over the top. It just has to be decently done. And you can spend a lot of money or a minimal amount of money. It's not cheap, but it's an effective tool to use if you've got a gifted communicator. How do we best leverage that gift? Half a century ago, Billy Graham, you've heard of Billy Graham, discovered that his team decided, how do we get Billy in front of more people? We have so many requests all around the country, all around the world. We know that whenever he speaks, people respond to the gospel. Every time we say yes to one city, we're saying no to 10, 15, 20 others. And we know in any of those places, people will respond. And then someone came up with the brilliant idea, why don't we just videotape, and not videotape, but film a crusade and buy airtime, usually a year later, and show it across the country. And millions of people over the years have come to faith by seeing Billy Graham in the privacy of their home, a hotel room, a bar, a jail, airport, who'd never gone to a crusade even in their own town, but that medium was a vehicle to leverage the gift of Billy Graham. And this is what I see churches across the country doing who have a gifted communicator. But
fantastic point. And you're giving me the perfect segue into the pros and cons of video delivery. These are things that are really important to consider. And you mentioned the first one, Jim. It's really leveraging your best communicator in more than one location. We would all love to have the gifts of Billy Graham. Only Chad does. But if we all had those gifts,
I cannot even believe you said that. That's like heresy. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, it's really about a leverage opportunity and using your most gifted communicators and spreading out their abilities so that more people can benefit from that. And that brings us to kind of the second benefit, and that's kind of an equality, that you are equalizing the value of every campus when you have your best communicators speaking at every campus. We see that here because we've got 9 different locations. Having Todd Cook, our senior pastor, be able to deliver the same excellent message no matter whether the campus is smaller or over 1,000 really equalizes the value there. We found that the third thing we notice is there's a level of efficiency you get having one communicator with one message at all locations every weekend. Promotion's a little bit easier. It's a little easier on your creative team who puts together the packaging and all those kind of things as well. It's very beneficial to have one communicator, one set of notes, one game plan for the weekend. Then it also frees up the campus pastor to truly pastor. Having had experience in a real small Southern Baptist church, I saw the strain on our senior pastor to have to decide each week, am I going to put my time into caring for and comforting and shepherding my flock, or am I going to have to use my time to put together a really dynamic message that everybody wants to hear? Well, he struggled because he realized there just wasn't enough time in the day to do both. That's the benefit you have of a campus pastor being able to shepherd and the senior pastor or teaching pastor or team being able to bring the actual message. It really allows everybody to focus on their priorities well.
Yeah, one of the things we talk about at Sun Valley is our vision is global and our leadership and care is local. But one of the things about that global vision and through one communicator is whoever your main communicator is builds the culture of the church.
Yeah.
And so in your church, when you have that culture worth repeating, it takes you to a point where your people begin to realize the church is not a box you sit in, it's a movement you choose to be part of. And there's a multiplying factor to that. So one of the benefits of video teaching is people begin to realize that the church is bigger than just where they're sitting. And there's kind of some unspoken returns on that because things just move further faster. Yeah. Because whoever that person is building the culture. And again, now you're shifting from we've got this gathering to we're a movement to help people follow Jesus. Yeah.
Chris, I wanted also just to highlight the fact that these are excellent points, the benefits, and you speak not only as the multi-site director who's overseeing now the multi-site work there at Sagebrush, but you're also on the teaching team. You're one of the communicators there. You also have been a campus pastor at various points along the way in your development of your team, so of your model there. So you have kind of several different perspectives of the benefits of the video teaching. So,
yeah, it's been interesting to watch, without a doubt.
Well, what are the cons? What are the challenges?
Challenges. Let's talk about those. I have one more.
Oh, one more. I'm sorry.
Benefit, and that's just simply dependability. We mentioned that earlier, but you don't have fatigue. At one point, we got to 6 weekend services here at the original Riverside campus, and I tell you, when you fill in and you do 6 services on a weekend, by the 6th service, you're not even sure what you're saying anymore. You're so tired. So when we realized we could actually use video at the original campus and supplement, that was a big deal for us. Let's go.
That usually happened to me on my second ones anyway.
Well, and even then, you're in a really bad mood the next few days. It takes you 2 or 3 days to recover from 6 services. So
yeah, and just as you recover, you're gearing up for the next weekend, which is it's just
that's right.
It's tremendous amount of time and pressure. Let's talk
Chris,
about.
like I say, one other kind of bow to wrap around the benefits. One of the key concepts of multi-siting is the idea of consistency. Multi-siting is all about reproducing your church in multiple locations, and obviously the preaching piece of a church is kind of the tip of the iceberg. That we know that the ministry of a church is more than just the sermon. As a matter of fact, most ministry happens between Sundays, but we realize that's the kind of the face to the community. It's the front door in, and how do we consistently deliver our message across all campuses? And video guarantees that consistency in the most simplest way. So, but anyway, what are the challenges?
Absolutely does. I would say first of all is perceptions. You have to be able to move past the perception. I remember when we first began talking about a multi-site campus, and this was way back in 2007, and mentioning that the teaching would be on video, and the initial response of a lot of people was not excitement. They were thinking you're going to show a movie, and they weren't quite engaged in what we were trying to do. And so it's moving past that perception and helping people realize that we are a video-driven culture, and there are some ways that we can help encourage them into video thinking. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Another one is the sense that it's impersonal, that if the senior pastor or teaching pastor is not there live and in person, it's somehow less spiritual. There's not this incarnational sense of God moving in the same way. And again, that's not the case at all, and there are things that we can do to help move past that. I think it's more personal because the campus pastor has the ability to build a relationship with people that a teaching pastor struggles to if he's really going to work on his message like he wants to. Third is we found that having a multi-site model with a teaching team of different pastors at different campuses can be very beneficial for equipping people to learn to be good communicators at smaller venues. You don't necessarily get that opportunity in the same way by having a video-driven weekend, although I will say this: we have 4 times as many teaching pastors as we did before Multisite.
Wow.
And we only use video at multi-site campuses. And so that kind of blows that challenge out of the water if you're really intentional about working on it.
Well, Chad, and you and Scott are co-pastors, co-teaching pastors at your church as well. And is there some others on your team?
Yeah, there's others on our team. At this point, I do the bulk of it, but then we have some other guys speak as well. And usually when they speak live. And so there's kind of a rotation there. The thing about it being impersonal, just to hopefully state the obvious, I've never met the Apostle Paul in person, but man, he's really helped me grow in my faith through reading his letters in the New Testament. And it's interesting because when it comes to people's perception, back to the I have people, were you there, were you not there, they have in their mind, it's not as spiritual, it's not as whatever because you're not there. And then we have people who wrestle, were you there, were you not? And my question is always, did it become less spiritual when you found out I wasn't there? You know, those kinds of things. It just works. And most people don't realize how well it works until they experience it. So it's the experience that kind of gets people past the perception.
Sometimes people ask me, would the Apostle Paul use video? And I say, absolutely. How do you know that? But because he said, I'll use all the means to available to reach as many people as possible. And so it's a tool. But yeah.
It's a great tool, and it is dependable, but it doesn't mean at times you're not going to have technological challenges with it, or tech bugs as we call them. Once in a while there are things that just don't go as smooth as you'd like, and at the end of the day you have to have some good contingency plans, and so we'll be talking about that a little more in a few moments, but that can sometimes bring a little bit of a challenge. Let's talk about methods.
Well, I say also too of the technology. Sometimes people are afraid of the cost. Is it just going to be financially beyond our capacity? And it's not cheap, but I think as you mentioned earlier, in the long run, it's probably less expensive than hiring full-time pastors at all these sites. But really, that shouldn't be the primary factor that causes you to go video or live. Is the cost.
Right.
It is reasonable. It's doable. And but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Methods of delivery. There are essentially 3 main methods to deliver the content, and you can kind of put them all into these 3 categories. One would be computer playback. This is just using a local computer of some sort, and you can do that with DVDs. A lot of campuses are currently burning a DVD of a service, playing it back with another. Some campuses use external hard drives. We did that for quite a while until we started using the third thing, which is cloud storage transfer. We're able to compress the video from the weekend, upload it to Dropbox, and then other campuses are able to pull it down that very same night and play it back the next day.
And where's your furthest campus, Chris?
Belize. San Pedro Island, Belize is our furthest. It's a slow internet, so it takes a little bit longer for them to download it there on the island, but they get it and unpack it, and it's been very.
Now that's not close to Albuquerque, right?
No. I've been trying to find a reason to become the campus pastor there, but our guy there is great, so no, hasn't happened yet.
I was going to say, Jim, let's go there after the Bahamas, and we'll do the whirlwind.
I'm there. Include me in on that. We know at least 60% of multi-site campuses, based on research, use this as their option. It's probably the most affordable, the simplest to use. You're able to build in a lot of good safety redundancies in it, and so that goes well. Okay, second option would be internet streaming, and the price of this has come down quite a bit, and so this is growing in popularity. We know that about 15% of campuses use a live stream. One of the benefits of the live stream is not only can you stream it to the campus, but you've got an automatic web campus where people can just go straight to the web and watch the live services as well, or with a slight delay. So that's very beneficial. Third option would be to have a simulcast via satellite. From what we've heard, only about 4% use this as an option. It's initially very costly. The more campuses you have, 3 or more campuses, and far distance locations, it actually becomes a lot more cost effective to use. But we all know satellite can sometimes do quirky things, and that can be a challenge.
Well, only 15% of all multi-site churches have more than 4 campuses, and so, or have more than 3 campuses. And so if you have only 1 or 2 satellites, not cost effective. But if you do more than that, it's very cost effective. Maybe
it is
the most effective and easiest to do. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, if you're thinking about timing your playback, you have quite a few options on when you play back what you've just captured. Again, we can kind of fit these into a couple of different options. One is live, instant delivery at satellite locations. So, you know, if you're using a satellite simulcast, typically you want a very slight delay, but you have that option. Second would be later the same day. There are campuses who record early in the morning. A first service, they're able to play back either late in the afternoon or even for an evening service. Third would be next day, which is what we do. We record on Saturday. That gives us plenty of time overnight, and then we're able to play back on Sundays. And then a 1-week delay is very, very common and very popular with a lot of video playback. It just gives you a really, really nice buffer of time. Let's talk about that, using a 1-week delay, because that seems to be one of the most popular choices. Well, we wanted to kind of have an honest look at the benefits of a 1-week delay versus some of the challenges that might come with that. First of all, it's the best message. You're really able, you know, if you're a pastor and you're delivering 3 or 4 talks, you know by now the obvious, that for whatever reason there was one talk that just, it was it. It was the one where you felt like you connected and people heard and responded well and everybody got your jokes in that message. That's the one you have the luxury of recording over the weekend and being able to deliver the very next
You mean you can pick the best one? Which is that one for you, Chad, usually?
Opinions vary, you know. I always say it's not the communicator, it's the crowd. Our best crowd is always the noon service. I think they're the most awake and that kind of thing, but there's a lot more reaction there. But yeah, being able to pick which message you thought was best is just a huge benefit.
Also takes that burden off of having to do something either really early on Sunday morning or Saturday. Your staff don't necessarily have to come and do kids ministry and all the things that come with a service in order just to have a good capture on a Saturday. That's a really nice benefit to be able to have that. You also have more prep time. When a campus pastor is able to watch the video a couple of times and really think about how he's going to package his stage time to really bring out something that came out of the talk, think of an application for it that's personal, it just gives a really nice buffer of time to be able to do that. And so those are some great benefits. Let's talk about a couple of the challenges with a 1-week delay. These are very real, and we've experienced not only these benefits but some of the challenges as well doing it. One of the things is it can complicate promotion. If you are playing something a week late at some or all of your multi-sites versus having your original campus or the campus with the live teaching being a different weekend, promoting on Facebook and using flyers or door hangers or anything that you want to do to help promote the weekend message gets a little bit complicated. The second thing is the holidays and crises. You know, there's nothing more exciting than watching a Christmas Eve service a week late, right? The presents are opened. Baby Jesus has gone back into the box with your displays, and you are moving on, and yet the message comes up and it's a Christmas Eve message a week late. That becomes a little awkward. So does the opportunity if there is a national crisis or a tragedy. Think 9/11. That was a week when we needed something that weekend that would speak to people, and it would have been awkward to have a week delay after a crisis like that hits. One more is we found that the week delay sometimes can create this rerun feel with people. If they know it's not the same weekend and we're not able to talk specifically about immediate things happening that weekend, say Father's Day, Mother's Day, those kind of things, it can come across somewhat as a rerun feel to people who are watching. So we've seen those things. Here's what we believe is the bottom line. The further away the multi-site is, the less of an impact a week delay makes. But if you have a campus within a 15 to 20 minute drive where there's live teaching, it can complicate it a bit. Anything to add to that, guys?
I'd say in our last survey with Leadership Network last year, it revealed that the bigger a church is and the more locations they have, the more inclined they are to do video. And but to your point, yeah, the delay becomes less of an issue the further away. You know, almost 90% of all multi-site campuses are within 30 minutes of the sending campus. So but when you get beyond that, it becomes less of an issue, the delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and different things work in different places. We have Saturday night service, so that's what we use, and then we deliver the hard drive to the other campuses. We do 2 Saturday night services, so we can choose which one of those talks was the best. But yeah, it works in different things.
And I also tell churches, Chris, that they probably shouldn't start out brand new with their first multi-site if they're doing video with a week delay. But usually a year or so later, it becomes less of an issue. Once people realize the content is good, the delivery's good. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, no matter whether you're using live teaching or video, you've got to have a backup plan, we found. And we've experienced it both with the live and both with video. So what do you do if your power goes out, or if the video, if the DVD got a scratch in it on the way, or something happens? Well, obviously we would go to the campus pastor. You do have a adequate pastor who's there on site, who is able to teach. It's very beneficial if he has the transcript of the message in paper, and if he has to, he's able to pull that out and teach that. He can also teach his own message if that's something that is preferred. A backup DVD is very, very beneficial to have, and if you're using external hard drive or using a downloaded video file like we do, having that DVD as a backup is very, very beneficial.
Is that running parallel to your?
It is. Yeah. Yep. We sync them both the same on our Pro Video server. We have 2 screens up on our video console. One is constantly running the digital file. The other is synced with the DVD. And at any moment, we can switch over to DVD. Nobody knows the difference. It's pretty impressive. Third option really is to use a previous message from the past, or kind of a best of message, or something that is just kind of your back pocket talk. Having that file stay on a hard drive just in case you need to pull it down and use it. Those are good options as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of give some stats. Chad and I both thought it would be great to give everybody watching kind of some of the similarities and differences in our track record with using video technology. So if you don't mind, I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of just who we are and what has worked well here at Sagebrush. We started in 1999, Super Bowl Sunday, with about 120 people, as you said, Jim, a church plant from the other side of town, and decided that we needed to see something neat happening on this side of town where our original campus is. And so we did. We opened our first multi-site in October of 2008, thanks to you, Jim. We actually used you as the consultant, so I feel greatly indebted to you.
You survived me.
I survived you, yeah. Currently have 8 campuses. We have really a 9th in the works in Santa Fe, New Mexico. This past weekend we had roughly 12,000 people attending among all the campuses. Our Santa Fe campus, we're using a new type of system to launch campuses. We have currently 80. We're in the 3rd week of that campus, and somewhere between being a starting campus model and a full-fledged multi-site location.
Chris, I want to just pause for a second. This is a topic for another webinar, but one of the things I love about what Sagebrush is doing, and you've been leading the effort on this, is you've come up with a creative strategy for launching congregations, campuses in faraway places like Santa Fe, which is about an hour and a half away, or Belize, or Farmington, or down in Las Cruces, where you start with a small group and then medium-sized groups, and then there's kind of a phase in strategy to where we get to a stage of being a full functioning congregation and all that. So it's another conversation for the day, but I love how you're thinking, and this is how you're spreading all across New Mexico and beyond.
Yeah, it's very cost effective. New Mexico isn't a high volume income state, and so we're trying some new strategies that are actually really paying off well. So yeah, I'd love to talk more about that. Our Heights campus is 1,100, so we have a real big span of size and attendance of campuses.
Now your Heights campus is your latest one in Albuquerque, right?
Say that again?
The Heights campus is the latest one in Albuquerque.
Yes, We actually have 2 campuses now in the Heights because we birthed our very first grandchild campus, and that campus is going great. It's just a year now under its belt. They're running about 220 a week, and so combined 2 campuses, we're seeing about 1,300 folks a weekend in the Heights. And looking forward to what God does this fall. We capture Saturday, playback Sunday. And we run a DVD, as mentioned, along with our Pro Video server as a backup. This is one of our video campuses, and you can see we have a dual shot. We have Todd on the main screen, full stage capture, plus the side screens. And like you, Chad, I would say almost weekly somebody will come up and ask to speak to Todd, and we'll have to let them know that was video. They just don't even realize they're watching a video instead of somebody live, so we see that a lot.
Is that a slide, Chris, you want to put up for us?
Yeah.
There we go, yeah.
Okay. Is he teaching karate right here in this shot?
He's getting like an illustration of baptism, that as you go down in the water and come up out of the water, it's a symbol of the cross. But yeah, he does look like he's doing a little kung fu fighting, if we're honest.
Todd is one of the most fun communicators I've get to enjoy across the country, and is one of the reasons why obviously you're growing. He's got an incredible gift of communication. He's insightful, humorous, connects with people.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Chad, you want to walk us through Sun Valley stats?
Yeah, we launched 2 multi-site campuses in 2011. And Jim helped us with that as well. One of those sites was a merger. The interesting thing about that is the merger campus was quite a bit larger than our original campus, but attendance at the merger campus was quite a bit smaller than our original campus. And so Jim helped us with that. We're actually featured in Jim's book, Better Together. So if you want to read about that, you can. And then the other campus we did was 30 minutes away, and it was really a church plant on a screen. The thing that we did differently is we moved our largest services on the original campus, so that would be 9 and 10:30 on Sunday morning, to video, which is kind of unique. But the reason we did that is because we felt like we had so much potential at the merger campus that we wanted to start it live, and we began to do some different things there. But by the same token, those video services have grown at the original campus. We really wanted people to know that this was our future and that it worked, and so we just flat out, right out of the gate, made the largest services video. Again, we launched the church plant using video. It started with 0. We did a parachute drop. There was actually a person who their children attended our services at the original campus. And she said, "Hey, can we do a Sun Valley, down where I live?" And she had the means to help us start that. And so we hired a campus pastor and did a church plant on a screen. And in the past 3 years, it's grown from 1 to it's averaging 300. Wow. And that's in the summertime. Here in our area, kids just started going back to school. So we're looking to see an increase here over the next few weeks. Overall, since we went to video teaching and multi-site, our average attendance has increased by 1,500 in the past 3 years, and it works. And we have plans in the work to start another site here in the next year. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of where we've been.
So Chad, you're in 3 locations with about 6,000 plus attendance across the 3. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one on the horizon. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And here's a shot of when we first started doing video teaching. I'll talk about this more in a minute.
And this is this is your original campus and your main service, right?
This is the original campus at the 10:30 service. So this is optimum campus at the optimum time. And show that next slide if you would, Chris. Now, when one of these I'm there, and in one of these I'm on video. So you can see the difference there. And I know one shot's kind of lighter than the other. Here's how you tell. You look at my feet. Go back. And that one, my feet are off the ground. So that one I'm on video, and this other one I'm live. And I know we'll talk about those side screens here in a moment, but it really does, for lack of a better word, all right, it tricks people. They think you're there, and regularly we'll have people argue over whether or not I'm actually in the room. In fact, sometimes I'll go back and I'll do one of those services live, and at some point during the message I'll go, hey, by the way, I'm actually here today. And then you hear a gasp. And then laughter, you know, and then everybody cheers, and then we move on.
Your former pastor, Chad, the church you grew up in, where Steve Stroop is the pastor of Texas, he likes to use the phrase, "We create the illusion of reality."
The illusion of reality. In fact, well, our people started calling it. My name's Chad, so they started calling it hologram Chad, because of the way that it's shaped, and with the IMAGs, it literally has kind of a 3D feel to it.
Yeah,
but it works.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One of the things that you and I talked about, Chad, is, you know, we may be convinced about video, but how are we going to get our people to come with us? And we've talked about kind of the technology, and now let's talk about the art of influence. And so, do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah, leadership is always a science and an art, and Chris did a great job giving us varying options of how to pull this thing off. This is just want to take a couple minutes to talk about how do you sell your people on it, for lack of a better word, and get buy-in. The first thing you want to do is you want to make the change during a time of momentum, both in the life of the church and in the rhythm of your year. Life of the church meaning this: you want to do multi-site because you've got momentum, not to create it. When we started our multi-sites, it's because we were out of space. Quite frankly, we didn't have any more money, and it was the best option. But we were busting at the seams, and it was what are we going to do? So you want to pick a time of momentum in the life of your church, and also in the context of the rhythm of your year. You don't want to go to multi-site when everybody's gone on vacation. You want to pick the time of year when everybody's back, everybody's excited, and when you start multi-site, you want to do a series that everybody is fired up about. In that picture that you saw in the background, it said Final Destination. I did an end-of-time series, you know, Revelation. Everybody's always fired up about that. I did that on purpose when we went to multi-site because I knew people would be excited about it. We went and interviewed the kid that's in the book, Heaven is for Real, and all that, and talked about what the Bible says in comparison. But we did that on purpose because we knew momentum would carry it. Mm-hmm. So that's really, really important to think about. Second thought there is give them clarity before you give them delivery. Tell your people why you're doing multi-site, where you're going to do multi-site, and how you're going to do multi-site. So before people ever saw it on video, we spent some time telling them that it works, how it works, information that Jim gave us, those kinds of things. And we also let people experience it. When you saw the shot a moment ago, you saw that those are called IMAG screens on the side, which is just kind of the face. And I would joke about how everybody fifth row and beyond is not looking at me anyway. They're looking at those side screens. Yeah. And everybody laughs. We told people exactly where video was going to be, what services were going to be video, and again, you know, why we were doing it, which is the next point. You always want to talk about it in the context of your vision. Mm-hmm. At Sun Valley, our mission is we help people meet, know, and follow Jesus, and so everything we do, we talk about in that context. Mm-hmm. We really feel like we've got a culture that's worth repeating. I think I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if I did or not. We got to baptize over 700 people last year, which was our largest year in the history of our church. So we talk about those kinds of things, and we want to leverage that and move further faster. So you always talk about it in the context of vision. Add IMAG and a video venue at the sending campus. I mentioned those side screens. That's IMAG. The other thing that we did is on Easter, so we knew a year out, you know, before we were going to multi-site. We actually knew about 18 months out. But at Easter and on Christmas Eve, we did video venues on our original campus. And we gave people the experience that you just saw, just on a smaller scale. Mm-hmm. And so we actually asked regular attenders the week before our Easter services and the week before our Christmas Eve services, don't come in the main room, go to the video venue because we want you to experience it. Mm-hmm. And so so that's what they did. And so there was a large group of people in our core, people that give, people that serve, that had already experienced video venue and believed that it would work, before we ever did it.
Chad, the IMAG stands for image magnification, as an abbreviation for that. But I recommend to churches, even if they're not going to use video, even if they're not going to multi-site, they ought to put IMAG site screens in their auditoriums just to enhance the experience for the people in the room, even when you're on the platform. Mm-hmm. And to your point, they will be more inclined to look at the screens because they can see you better and hear you better. Because your image is magnified, you're bigger than a smaller person on a stage when you're about 10 rows back. So that's a good step before multi-siting video delivery, is to learn how to do it in the room and how to capture it, and then how to present it in a video venue across the campus. If you can't do it across the campus, don't go across town. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And to your point about using the IMAGs, even if you're not going to use video, so much of communication is in your face, and it makes you a better communicator. Mm-hmm. And when you can learn with a joke or with a strong point or those kinds of things to look in the camera, it's up close and personal suddenly.
Yeah.
And it just gives a different feel.
Yeah, that's what's counterintuitive about video. It's actually more personal, because you feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation with the person on the screen.
Yeah.
And about 1 minute into the talk, if there's not any video distractions and all that kind of stuff, technical distractions,
well, it's funny.
You forget that the person's not maybe in the room. Go ahead, Chris.
You do, and we noticed that when I'm up there teaching, our current worship center where our video is captured seats 2,000, and it's a pretty big arena setup. I can see people pretty well. It's amazing that the first probably 5 or 6 rows are looking up at me. Where are the heads of everybody else?
Yeah, like this.
Correct.
Looking at those side screens.
Because they want to see me up close, and they can't because the room's too big. And so, by nature, people are going to opt for the video because you have a better presentation in a room that size.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. Sometimes when I'm going to have what I call a pastoral moment, leadership moment, everybody's looking at you anyway, but I'll go, hey, look at me here for a second. Like if I'm going to tell them Jesus loves them, something, look at me here for a second. And every head goes to those side screens. Yeah. It's funny. And they are looking at me. First 5 rows, they're looking at me. Everybody else is looking at those screens.
Yep.
Consider using video at the sending campus to show it works. That's multi-site. In other words, you're sending a couple hundred people across town to start the new campus. Let them experience that ahead of time. And then kind of the next point there is be okay with losing some people. When you go to video and when you make those changes, there are some people that are just not going to make the change. I'm going to say that again because that's a big point in the leadership and all this. Be okay with losing some people. Some people are not going to make the change. Some people, the church is getting bigger, we don't like it, all that kind of thing. Leadership is always controversial. There's nothing controversial about a coffin because nothing's happening there but rot, right? But if you're going somewhere and if you're moving, there's going to be controversy, there's going to be questions, there's going to be people who are not sure. That's okay. So some people just aren't going to be able to make the change. It'll be a fairly, in our case, a really small percentage. It'll be a fairly small percentage. And give them options if you can. What we did, again, because we made the original campus, our video venues, those 2 prime hours, is we said, experience the video first. If you just can't wrap your mind around it, come on Saturday night, which is always live. By the way, we needed to free up seats at 9 and 10:30 on Sunday morning anyway, so that was a good move. But some people just aren't going to make it, and that's okay. And kind of as the leader, you have to decide that that's okay. In our case, again, in the past 3 years, we've grown in average attendance by 1,500. So we've gained a lot more than any any we've lost.
Chad, another option that you give is that you could hear the message live on Saturday night or at our, is it 12 o'clock service on Sunday morning?
Yeah, what I do, because we had a merger across town, is I'll do the 2 services on Saturday night. Those are video at the original campus on Sunday morning at 9 and 10:30. I'm live across town, and then I drive back for the noon service.
And that's a well-attended service. About 700, you said?
Yeah, it goes down a little bit when football season starts. I know you can't imagine that. Yeah. But it's actually not a noon service, guys. It's at 11:59.
Okay.
That's an important clarification. That just sounds so much earlier, doesn't it?
Chad, I always tell churches, not everyone is going to like the video delivery concept. Not everyone has to. Just enough have to.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, and in our initial survey with Leadership Network back in 2005, when it was mostly mega churches that were multi-siting as the first wave, so they mostly were doing video, we asked the question, what was your biggest concern about video sermon, about going multi-site? And their response was whether our people would embrace the video sermon. What was your biggest surprise? How quickly they did. And it gets back to what you said earlier, Chris. If you've got a good communicator, the right communicator, and you capture it decently, the right capture, and the right presentation, it works. And it works. By the way, it works in urban, suburban, rural. It works nationally, internationally.
And to change that perception, the more you share and celebrate that it works, the more people believe it works.
And I've also found that if the leadership doesn't have confidence in it, that is the senior leadership or even the campus pastor, you're setting it up to fail.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you believe in it, and that it's a good model, a vehicle, and you do it decently, like we've said, it works. It works.
Yes. Yeah. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, and don't surprise anybody. Clarity before delivery. This is what we're doing. This is where we're doing it. This is how we're doing it. Above all else, this is why we're doing it. Yeah. That's right. Next one, share and celebrate the wins. For example, we did baptisms a couple of weekends ago. This past weekend, I just told a baptism story from each campus. And each of those, and showed a picture of their baptism. So everybody at our Gilbert location saw baptisms from Tempe and Casa Grande and so forth with the other campuses. And so we baptized 161 people. All of those represent a life. Let me just tell you a story from each of our locations. And then the picture comes up, and people are crying and stuff about how Jesus changes lives. It's great. The last thing is give it some time. So when you do it, you're going to have a bit of reaction, which is fine. By the way, when we told everybody it was coming in the 10:30 service, I wasn't in the room because I was on video, but all of our staff said, I came up on video and it looked like I walked out on stage, and so the crowd just went, oh, and then they were totally into it. And since then it's just built. But you give it some time. And you celebrate the wins, and you remind people regularly that it's working. And again, I said this earlier, that the church is not a box you come and sit in. It's a movement you choose to be part of, and it gives you leverage to challenge people to be part of the movement. Yeah.
By the way, one other thing, Chris and Chad, do you make reference to the other sites in your messages? How do you connect across the campuses like that?
I do, and even in the areas where I'm live and we're not video capturing, I'll still say the same thing. I'll say, hey, I want to welcome everybody at Gilbert, at Tempe, at Casa Grande, and all of you who are watching online. And I'll say that every service.
Yeah, we used to welcome every campus. You get to 8 campuses, it gets kind of strange. So what we did is we'll pick and select a different thing from a different campus. One of the times that we buffer in each weekend is called the live service transition. That's the transition between the worship and the video, where the campus pastor comes out, welcomes everybody, kind of welcomes anybody who's a first-time guest, gives a couple of simple house rules, lets everybody know we're glad you're here, and then sets up the video before we go to it. And that's really where we will use that time not only to celebrate what's happening at that particular campus, but we share what's happening at all campuses in that moment as well, because it helps them feel like they're part of something bigger than just the one place they're meeting at. We also do a video blog every single week. Todd is he's on video for about a minute. He shares updates on what's happening across all campuses, initiatives that are happening at all campuses. He can use video clips and different things as well, so that we are looking at different avenues to communicate what God's doing at every location, rather than just trying to figure out a way to get it done in the talk itself.
It's good. It's good. Hey, well, we're wrapping. We got about 30 minutes left here, and we want to open this up to questions from our participants. And so Justin has been gathering those questions. Justin, if you're ready, if you want to start lobbing those questions our way. If not, I've got 2 or 3 I want to throw at Chad and Chris. So, what are we hearing from?
Jim, I am ready to go.
Okay.
We've got a couple of questions. We've got Ryan Knapp from Riverbend Community Church, actually. Just wanted to say thanks for having us. He's from Allentown, Pennsylvania, so he wanted to share his gratitude. Mark Johnson from Oak Hills Church in San Antonio, Texas, wanted to hear what's being done to navigate the ins and outs of supporting an international multi-site campus with video teaching.
Well, Chris, I think that's obviously a toss to you there. How are you doing this? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, everything for us comes down to meeting rhythms, shipping rhythms. You know, you can't ship stuff to Belize in less than about 8 weeks. It's pretty ridiculous. They also don't have a lot of resources in Belize City, which is on the mainland. So we've really had to learn a couple things. One is we've got to plan out further than we ever thought possible. If we're going to do a series, and believe it or not, they're with us on the same weekend. The good news is they can download the video. It's a H.264 format, a real standard format. They can download it in about an hour.
And Belize is an English language country as well.
Correct, yes. So the good news is they can get the video. That's not the problem. What makes it hard is the program. What makes it hard is if Todd's doing something unique, or whoever's communicating that weekend is doing something kind of special, where we hand something out to everybody and reference it in the message. Well, guess what? We got to have an 8-week lead time to get that thing out. And so the number one thing we've got to do is we've got to plan really far ahead. Todd has his talks done more than a year out, because that gives us plenty of time. Second thing we've got to do is make sure that we have very good meeting rhythms with the folks. So our kids ministry connects with their kids ministry weekly, student ministry to student ministry, worship ministry to worship ministry. We really try to synchronize and stay on the same page with them, so that there are no surprises coming up on the weekend. Third thing is we had to figure out what things are they dependent on us to do in the U.S., and what things can we send them that they're capable of doing there on the island. What are the resources that are local? Do they have a printing company there? If we send the file, they can print things locally to save time. How about invite cards? We do invite cards for every single series. Well, we send a JPEG to a local printing place, and they're able to do those kind of things there. We send the file of the program. They're able to print those there, so we don't have to worry about it. So it's, you know, it really comes down to those 3 things to be well prepared. But it's been a learning curve for us in a huge way.
Yeah, we don't. This kind of an outside the box comment. We don't have multi-sites internationally, but interestingly enough, we have a group in Poland. We have a group in Brazil that watches us online regularly, and it's kind of a small group that's becoming a large group. Which is interesting. So they're not technically a multi-site, but they're watching our teaching and begin to gather. And we do, for small groups, we do extended sermon notes, so they get those and use those. So we've got little pockets of movement happening, kind of on more of an international scale. But that video teaching works.
Chris, yeah. I think one of the questions about how does this happen overseas, usually it's not just let's go pick a country and go do something there. There's usually some relationships and connections. It might be helpful just to quickly tell the story how this happened in Belize for you guys.
Well, yeah, we had a couple that was, you know, they were sagebrushers, as we call them. They had our DNA down. Our heart was their heart. Our values were their values. Well, the couple moved to the island. Kyle Thomas, our campus pastor there, had been from Belize. He had grown up visiting there, and so he had a real affinity for it. Well, they got to the island, and just didn't have a lot of options for churches that kind of fit their DNA. There were 3 churches, 2 of them were Christian. That was it. And so they said, well, why don't we just watch the videos from the weekends at Sagebrush, and then we'll use the sermon-based small group curriculum and kind of extend the time. So we'll have kind of a service followed by a small group experience. Well, they began to do that in their home. They outgrew their home. They began to do that in a meeting space where Kyle has a business as a real estate guy. And after about 40 people started showing up, and they had it, they had 2 services, so to speak, going, Kyle called and said, okay, God's doing something here, help us out. And that's really where we came alongside and started to incrementally add resources to get them where they are today. They're running about 240 folks a weekend. Huge kids population. They have a kids ministry with over 100 kids that come. And that's really where it all began, is we had a DNA carrier. We kind of partnered that with technology, which is the video, and then some supplemental resources for kids and for small groups, and those things all kind of collided. And that's really kind of the base of where we began to use a host group model, which is what we use now to launch a campus.
Well, and you've done the same thing in Farmington, which is somewhat like a different nation. It's the Indian nation, the Navajo there, and a different kind of culture for sure, even though it's New Mexico. But I love the model. So, good question. What's Justin? What else?
Sure, we got one. It's kind of 2 people asking similar questions. Matt Miller from Prairie Lakes Church in Iowa asks, we currently send the recording of our Saturday night service to our multi-sites on Sunday morning. We are considering switching to having our teaching pastors record in a studio environment after the Saturday night service. This would allow us to create a recording that is 100% geared toward those watching on video. Have any of you guys considered a similar system, or do you think the extra effort is not worth the quality improvement? Gary Treichler from Dublin, Ohio, at Vista Community Church, wanted to know, is anyone recording without a live audience? So kind of the same question, but different angles on that.
Go ahead, Chad. Why don't you guys both respond to that, and then I'll give a little broader experience that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I've recorded personally without a live audience a couple of times because I was going to be out of town on a weekend, and quite frankly, we wanted everybody to experience video venue. I could just tell you, as a communicator, especially for those who are more naturally gifted in that way, naturally gifted communicators feed off the audience, facial expressions, those kinds of things. Natural communicators don't give talks, they talk to people. You kind of let that sink in. So you're watching the crowd and you're feeling the crowd, and literally the communicator is reacting and adjusting as they're giving a talk, talking to the people. And so you probably will have better talks if you have people in front of the communicators. In my mind, that would be the gap, and something to really consider and think about. However, the times that I have done that without a crowd, I'm always on time. I don't ever run over because you're not reacting to laughter and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But my opinion would be communicators are better with a live audience. So something to look out for.
Chris, Todd does.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What does Todd do?
Yeah, we thought about doing that. Here was the reason why we never quite did anything like that. One is we use the video blog, and even though it's very brief, it's directed toward, we can do video blogs directed just towards specific campuses, and say, here's a special announcement that Todd wanted to share with you here in whatever campus. So we kind of scratch that itch a little bit there. The other thing is, we feel like we would sacrifice having a talk pointed towards a multi-site with a talk that's personal. On the one hand, it feels like it would be more intentional and more pointed to speak in a studio, but exactly like you said, Chad, we don't want messages that are lectures. We want an interactive experience where the communicator is feeding off the crowd, having fun. It's two-way. That's part of what makes the video experience work. Yeah, I've been to a video campus every single weekend for years now, and I can tell you that certain jokes and certain things, those moments when we'll say, hey, if you're here and this resonates with you, put your hand up. Across the board, people are interacting at multi-sites, and you can't substitute that experience.
Yeah. Andy Stanley, Craig Rochelle both have done talks in a room before the weekend in the past, but typically they would have maybe the staff 20, 30 people in the room, 50 people in a room. It is, to your point, it's hard to just speak to an empty room. Sometimes in a special situation like you've done, Chad, you do that if you need to. But most have some kind of group that they're speaking to.
Yeah.
Another question, Justin?
Sure. We've got one from Daryl LeBlanc in Port Jervis, New York at Grace Community Church, and he's wondering, kind of a technical question, how are you compressing video for cloud storage transfer? Do you use Dropbox? How big is the video file? I know you mentioned H.264 earlier, so he's wanting a little bit of the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, and we could put you, believe it or not, we can put you in touch with the technical director here to give you more specifics and let you know what kind of software we're using. You can send me an email, ChrisD, at sagebrush.cc, and we will get down to very technical nuts and bolts of it. But I'll just say we capture, we compress down to less than I think 6 or 7 gigs. And then we upload that to Dropbox. And for us, the process takes, I would say, an hour total by the time the service is done to get the first of 3 things uploaded. We upload 3 things. One is we do the center shot. We do that separate. We do the IMAG side screenshots. And then third is we'll do a feature video, or sometimes we do a feature song to close the service. Some of the campuses use that if they don't have the vocal talent to be able to pull that off. And so we'll upload that as an option as well. So we break it up into those 3, but it's surprisingly small and simple to send.
While Justin is getting the next question, let me ask a couple questions related to that. At your multi-site video campuses, do you have a screen? Are you having? Do you have cameras at those sites where the local site pastor, campus pastor, is on a side screen, or the worship is on a side screen, and then the message comes on, a full screen in the middle, and as well as the side screen? Or does the video only come? Are the screens only used when the sermon is being presented?
We use ProPresenter, and we actually run worship on all 3 screens. So the same background and the lyrics come up on all 3 screens during the worship time, and then when it switches to teaching video, it's the teaching on all 3 screens. But yeah, we don't have any local camera. So
is the worship live at your sites?
Just about every site.
But is the worship leaders at those sites on the screens?
No.
Okay. How about you, Chad?
Yeah, on ours, on one location, they're on screens because it's a large auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
And the other, it's like what Chris does. So you have lyrics and ProPresenter and the movement that happens on the screens. Yeah. But it's just the campus pastor light because the auditorium is small. But in the other case, they're on IMAG when they're up on the stage and all those kinds of things.
So it varies maybe on the room size. The point I wanted to make sure is everyone understands. 99.9% of all multi-site churches that use video, they have local live worship.
Mm-hmm.
They're not beaming in the worship. Mm-hmm. And I recommend to churches at the venues, as they're able to do that, is to have a local camera so that the local worship team, the local campus pastor, that he's on the side screens or even the center screen as well. Before the message, so that you create this seamlessness, so you're not going in and out of video, you're having the video screens being utilized the whole time. It minimizes the fact that the sermon is being delivered by video when everything is on a screen from the moment you start, just like it is typically at the home base, where you have the local pastor preaching and he's on the side screens, but he's in the room.
Yeah.
So that's a recommendation. The other thing I forgot to mention earlier, was both of you have a large center screen and then typically a side screen, what we call IMAG. Is that right, at all your sites?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's one way. Other churches like Mars Hill and Life Church, they have one center screenshot, and it's not typically a full body shot. It's just a head shot, and they're not trying to create, quote, the illusion of reality. And does that work? Absolutely. Life Church is the largest church in the country, and the largest multi-site church in the country. And Mars Hill is one of the top ones as well.
Yeah, we actually do both. And our smaller venue, it is just that single shot, but it's a full body shot, and I get to be 7 feet tall, and in real life I'm 5'8", so that's like awesome. But yeah, it's just that single shot.
Yeah, and we do, our host group model is a single shot because it's a lot easier to work with. And you don't need as much setup and tear down to make that happen because we're in portable venues everywhere except one campus.
I think the point I would
we kind of make that the reward for moving from kind of the host group video and small group experience to an actual full-blown multi-site campus. Part of that reward is we come in with a truss and we hang full screens, and it's a 3-screen shot, and it's definitely an upgraded experience.
You know, and at the bottom line of all that, it's not about the medium, it's about the message, about the messenger.
Yeah.
And it's not the technology, it's not about bells and whistles. They're just tools, they're vehicles to a means to an end, they're not the end game. But Justin, we got some other questions coming.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. I actually don't think we're going to be able to hit all of them. I'm trying to combine the similar ones so that everyone gets answered. But one question is, have you thought about having a both-and strategy with multiple live options and multiple video venues? Can you speak to concerns or effectiveness of not doing the same thing at each campus?
I'll respond to that one because we do that. If I'm not preaching, the campus pastor is preaching live on their campus.
How often?
I'd say about 20-25% of the time.
Okay.
Back to your question earlier, the comment about the myth of you can't develop teachers or whatever. One of the interesting things that happened was Jim mentioned I'm a co-lead pastor with Scott Rideout, the other lead pastor at Sun Valley, and so we used to do 50-50, and then I started doing 70-30 and those kinds of things because we have different gifts. But one of the things that happened is at one of the smaller campuses, we let the student pastor preach one weekend just at that campus. And he killed it. And so here we are a year later, and if I'm not preaching to all campuses, it's that guy who's preaching to all campuses because he's got the gift. And we wouldn't have known that had we not had the opportunity to let it, for lack of a better way to say it, try him out in that smaller venue. Here's the other thing. In the context of that, I've really thought through, okay, if I'm not speaking, do we let this younger guy speak or do we let the campus pastor speak? And the truth is I do all of the above.
Yeah.
Because it's attention to be managed. It could be that the wisest thing to do on one particular campus is let that campus pastor speak on any given weekend because of what they have going on and what they have coming up. So the great thing is you can always just pray through and think through what's best for the church at large and for that particular site, and you can move the chess pieces that you need to move when you need to move them.
Yeah, we're about 95% video at multi-sites, but we try to look for occasions when it's really beneficial for the campus pastor to be able to communicate. Maybe it's heading in the fall and he's able to take a weekend when Todd or somebody else is not speaking, and he can really speak into his campus, talk about where he wants to go for the fall. They can have the Lord's Supper and make it a very personal experience. Same thing with going into the new year. For us, we're a very vision-driven church, and so it's beneficial for us to be able to take the overarching vision and break it down campus by campus and give campus pastors the opportunity to communicate that as they begin a new year. It just is really a chance to rally the troops, and you cannot do that in a 2-minute live service transition. You really need a service to be able to communicate that.
You know, our last survey with Leadership Network, when we asked the question, which way do you deliver your messages, about 47% were primarily or strictly live teaching, and that's what we're going to talk about in our next webinar. But 27% were primarily or strictly video, which is probably more like you, Chris, at Sagebrush. But another 27% said we use a combination, live and video, which is maybe Chad may be more in that category. So it's all over the map. So the bottom line, about half do video either exclusively or in a hybrid format, or half don't use video at all. And so a lot of times when people hear about multi-site church, they think automatically two things: Mega church, well, we know that the average size of a church that goes multi-site is around 1,200 now. It's not a mega church. But they also think video. And we know from all of our surveys, it's never been 100% video at a multi-site at all multi-site churches. And half do, half don't. So it's definitely a viable method. I recommend to churches, the ideal scenario is to develop teaching teams and have all your campuses video capable. And then you can determine, do you want to be primarily video or supplementary video? That's what every local church has to figure out what's right for them. And a lot
well,
has
it
to do
frees
with
you up. I
their
mean, if
team.
you have a campus pastor who's also part of the teaching team,
Yep.
He's probably going to get a little bit more liberty to speak.
Absolutely. And that's even better.
Yeah.
That's even better when your campus pastors are part of that teaching team.
Yeah, and just this is along these lines. We do have campus pastors that don't necessarily preach. That's not their gifting. But they're in my teaching team meetings, and they're contributing to what's going to be taught. Yeah. So they know what's coming. They've contributed to it. They get credit for a really good line. You know, hey, I want to mention Scott Smith, man, just clarified this passage. Boom, here it is. You know, so you do those kinds of things. Yeah.
By the way, if you by now you probably realize Chad Moore is a phenomenal communicator, and it's one of the reasons why their church is growing. He's a phenomenal communicator, and has a gift as well. And yet I see him developing these others around him, and so way to go. Justin, another question.
Yeah, we've got one from Tyler Peterson. He says another part of video teaching that he's come across is online campuses. Is that something you'd recommend if they went the video streaming route, meaning having a stream available for people to view online?
We do online streaming, and to be really blunt, we're figuring out what we're going to do with it. Our fastest growing area of ministry is what's happening online. We've grown by over 400% since January 1st. And so we just had a big planning retreat, and that's one of the things that we're really going to tackle here as we're going in to the rest of this year and the new year. We've got people saying yes to Jesus online. We've got people doing some studies with us online, and so we're looking at that. And it's not just because you can track on where the people are who are watching online with those live streams. We have an app so people can download that, but they're watching that later on in the week. We have more and more people as the service going on watching online, and again, we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do with that. So.
Yeah, we don't do any online streaming. We do have a video cast people can watch that's uploaded by probably first thing Monday morning. I don't have a real good reason why we don't. I think we've been so busy launching campuses that we put our emphasis and energy in that rather than trying to have something online that people can participate in. But we don't have an aversion to it, I'll say that.
I would say that if you are a video-oriented multi-site kind of church, then you're more than halfway there to having a effective online campus. To me, what makes an online campus, and a small but growing number of churches are pursuing the online campus, just like you've said, Chad. It's a growing thing. We're learning how to do this. And Leadership Network has some resources on the online campus model. But what primarily makes to me an online campus is a dedicated online campus pastor that is a pastor to those people online. And but both of your churches already have the technical equipment to do this. You're already doing good video capture. It's not that difficult to put it online, but the real thing is how to really leverage that vehicle to really reach people and then incorporate them into growing fellowship of believers, etc.
Yeah, if we called it a campus, it would be by far our fastest growing campus. Yeah. The other side of that is, and I lost my train of thought a moment ago, we can track where those people are.
Yep.
And the truth is, most of them just didn't get up and come to church that day. They're sitting at home, with their spouse in their underwear, drinking coffee, watching our services online. And for a while, I thought, let's not live stream. That way, they'll have to actually come to church. But then, bottom line is, we realize that's the way the wind's blowing, so we're just going to adjust ourselves to reach as many people as we can.
Well, I think this is a big thing. It's shifting the emphasis away from ministry church happens in a box The biggest platform now we have is in a big building. That was our past. 15, 20 years ago was the big building was the platform. Today it's the internet. And so it's a huge opportunity to reach way beyond your immediate community as well as impact your immediate community. And so anyway, great question. And it's a topic for another webinar day, and we will bring in some specialists on that to come back at it. There's some churches that are really leading the way. Probably the Life Church is doing really is strong. Potential Church down in the Miami area are probably the two leading online church campus ministries going on right now. Another question.
Yeah, Bob King is wondering, is your staffing structure centralized or decentralized? Would you change this if your campuses were over a certain size?
Wow, that's a huge question.
Actually, that was our last webinar topic, all about that, but quick answer.
Our quick answer is we've moved to kind of seeing, we talked about the cloud storage. Our original campus is almost now like the cloud thinking, where central services are provided and programming's provided, and then it's pulled down to every single campus. So we kind of have more of a central support team now, and then all of our key departments fall under central support, and then each multi-site campus runs more and more as its own staff. And that's the shift we've made. We really just have had to move towards that. When you get past 7, 8 campuses, you can't sustain a traditional model anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing, just a little bit different. We call it air war, ground war. So all the ground war, everybody on a particular campus reports to their campus pastor. He's responsible for what happens there, student ministry, children's ministry, those kinds of things. Air war is the weekend and the programming. So everybody's practicing the Sun Valley way across the campuses, but they're reporting to their campus pastor, and then the weekend is driven through central services. So air war is central, and ground war is campus pastor.
Our last webinar on multi-site organizational structure, which you can get at our YouTube's website, really was diving into that whole topic of how do you organize for multi-site. And it's always that every multi-site church has a matrix organizational structure. It's all about dotted line and solid line reporting structures and communication lines. And every church has to wrestle with that between central leadership giving guidance, central support, operations giving support to all the sites, and then site staff executing the mission, vision, strategy of the church. Great question, and a whole nother hour-and-a-half topic. So, Justin, I think we got time for maybe one or two more.
Sure. We've got a couple of questions kind of with the nuts and bolts of actually doing it. Have you found it important or helpful for the multi-site venues to have the same background props as the sending church?
Yes. Yeah, it looks the same. The great thing, if you do that center screen, if you do the full shot, if that's the way you go, is wherever you're capturing that, you'll see the background of the stage. So in your other places, it just looks like the background because that's what you've captured, and then we'll add smaller kinds of props to kind of enhance it. But yeah, we try to make the stages look as close to exactly the same as close to the same as possible. Chris? Same?
Yeah, we use big enough screens that we cover such a significant part of the stage that what you see at the Riverside campus that's on capture is what you see at those locations. So it's similar to what you're saying, Chad.
Let me ask you a question related to this. Your campus pastors, what role do they play in introducing the message and in closing the message and the service? And how much are they involved in that process?
We use campus pastors for roughly 6 minutes on stage time, and we break it up into 3 chunks. Worship pastor typically comes out, welcomes everyone, let's stand, let's sing some songs. When worship is done and the worship pastor prays, the campus pastor actually comes out on stage, and then we say amen. There's a campus pastor, and that stage break of the 3 is for the guest. So this is where he says, hey, we're glad you're here. Here's our vision: to know Christ and make Christ known. If you're a first-time guest, we want to meet you after the service. We've got a gift for you, autographed picture of Chad Moore. And then we go into a couple of house rules and then set up, we're in the series called Defining Moments, and we believe God's going to have some defining moments here today. And so to help us out, would you please help us with this, this, and this? And let's enjoy this service as we join Pastor Todd. And then we usually close a transition video. Once the message is done, Todd prays at the close of his message, and then again lights come on. That's the second break for the campus pastor. We use our program, also known as a bulletin, has next steps that people can take. So we typically draw them to a commitment. If today you decided to accept Christ, we want you to fill out your name and check the box, and we want to make sure we follow up with you this week, get you a Bible and some things. So that's for the person who's made a commitment, whether they're a guest or a longtime attendee. Then we almost always go into some kind of a feature song. It does two things for us. It gives time for people to think through and take a step of faith on their program. And it also gives people a chance to kind of reflect and think about what they've been hearing before they just get up and leave. Campus pastor comes out at the very close, and this is his third break, and it's more for the core. And this is where he says, hey, let's stand for closing prayer. Don't forget we have the barbecue event coming up, or baby dedications, or next weekend, or whatever he needs to share. That's how we use their time.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sure. Our campus pastor is almost always the host, so he's going to welcome guests and those kinds of things. Occasionally, if I really challenged everybody to serve, to give something to that extent, I will have done all the motivation, and after the prayer at the end of the sermon, the campus pastor will step up, and here's what this means for our campus. But always the host. Occasionally they'll have a leadership moment right after the sermon, but it's more logistical than it is motivation.
Yeah. I hate to say that we're getting close to the end of our time, and I know there's probably more questions out there. For those of you who logged in with us today, we will be sending a follow-up email to all of you and a link to download this webinar, as well as a few other resources related to this topic. And so thank you so much for joining with us. 2 months from now, October 9th, is our next webinar on the live in-person teaching team model. A slight change of time, 10:30 to noon on that day. But and if you think Chris and Chad could be helpful to you, or you'd like to talk to them some more, and they're certainly available to even consult and coach with your church, you can contact us at Multisite Solutions, and to the About Us page, you'll find their bios there and contact information. But it's great. Thanks so much, Chris, Chad, for sharing with us today.
My pleasure.
And it's been so fun, and it's been fun working with you guys over the years and seeing how God has blessed your church in ministry in spite of all of us. But thanks again, and thank you, everyone in the audience. We'll see you in a couple months or sooner. Be blessed, be fruitful, and multiply.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.